Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are going to be looking at Mooncat's new Pandora's Unboxed collection. This lineup features 9 polishes in assorted finishes like shimmers, multi-chromes, magnetics, and even a new glow-in-the-dark polish. As always, I have a ton of comparisons, so make sure to check the description box for any timestamps. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first shade we have is Forbidden Fruit, and bear with me since I don't have the official color descriptions for these, but I would describe this as an almost plummy red jelly base with this gold to green kind of multi-chrome shimmer. It even shifts to this almost minty aqua color in extreme lighting. It is just so cool. So even though this one has a jelly base, it's still super pigmented and really smooth to work with. It just felt so nice to apply, and I was really impressed with the coverage on this one, where I only needed 2 coats to get this fully opaque for me. So here it is with some extreme lighting so you can see that shift, and while it looks really cool with the cat eye effect, I of course have to show this with the velvet effect using a horseshoe magnet, and I was so blown away with how glassy and almost chromy this looks. I feel like this is one of the few magnetics that really looks like it could be gel. I was just so mesmerized by this polish. The next magnetic we have is Curiosity's Trap, which I would describe as this kind of bright cobalt blue shimmer with a gold magnetic pigment and a dainty hollow sparkle. This more or less had the same formula as the last shade, but the finish is obviously a bit different with the added blue shimmer and this hollow kind of fleck. I normally do like a little extra pigment in my magnetics because I feel like the previous shade could be a little plain looking with just the magnetic shimmer, but for some reason this one just wasn't really doing it for me, mainly out of color preferences. There's nothing wrong with the polish. Again, it magnetizes beautifully. I just didn't really love this one. And the last magnetic we have is Pandora's Box, which I would describe as a deep berry base color with this purple to red shifting shimmer, as well as a gold to amber kind of magnetic pigment. I think I would say this one is my favorite of the magnetics. I just love these lush berry colors so much, and I thought the magnetic color complemented the base and the shimmer so nicely. This one also had another super flawless, really pigmented formula where it was fully opaque for me in 2 coats. I think this one looked especially stunning in extreme lighting where you see that shift to that red shimmer. It is just so stunning and perfect for fall. And just like the other magnetics, this one velvetized beautifully. It just looked so glassy and chromy and very gel-like. The next shade we have is the Arsonist, which is a fiery crimson red shimmer. So I don't wear red super often, but holy crap, is this a new favorite. It is just so bright with that red shimmer, but the base is a little bit deeper too. Obviously, I'll be showing comparisons later in the video, but man, Mooncat really knows how to make amazing reds. This one had another super pigmented full coverage formula that was basically opaque for me in 2 coats, and yeah, I just have no words. This is stunning, and I feel like it could work for the holiday season. It's giving me sexy Santa kind of vibes. Then we have the Glory of Innocence, which is this beautiful softened purple with this gorgeous aqua shimmer. And to be completely honest, I don't know if this has holo in it because I feel like I can see some flashes of rainbow, but if anything, it's more on the scattered dainty side. It's not like their other linear holos with a shimmer formula, if you know what I mean. So basically, I'm either seeing things things, or the holo is just really, really subtle. But either way, I still thought it was a super beautiful polish. The formula on this one was lovely, where it was a little bit sheer on the first coat, but opaque enough for me in two. I think if you look closely, you can see a little hint of nail line, but it wasn't enough to do a third coat for me. And I love how the shimmer shifts in this one. Speaking of shifty shimmers, next we have Lust for Vengeance, which I would describe as this bruised magenta base with a green to aqua to fuchsia shifting multi-chrome shimmer. Maybe bruised is a weird way to describe it, but it's not just a pink or magenta. It kind of has this like brownish, purpley sort of undertone to it. And I thought this was just so unique and so stunning. It's easily one of my top favorites from this collection. The formula was really great too, where usually multi-chromes are super sheer, but I found this one had great coverage on the first coat alone. And you can see just how packed with shimmer it is. It just glows so much. I personally got this opaque for me on 2 coats, but I could see some people maybe needing a third. It just depends on your preference. The next multi-chrome we have is Root of All Evil, which is a deeper purple base with a green to cyan to indigo shifting multi-chrome shimmer. Now I know, at first swipe, this might look really similar to the last shade, and you might even think they're too similar to be in the same collection, but don't worry, once you see them in the Skittle portion, you will be able to see the differences. The only thing this really has in common with the last shade is the formula and coverage. I guess they do have a similar bright blue shimmer in their shifts, but this one is just overall deeper and moodier. I think it's a lot easier to tell on the second coat that it builds up to this purple base, but it definitely has a similar brownish kind of undertone like the last shade. The last multi-chrome we have is Serpents of Eden, which is a vibrant lime to aqua to indigo shifting shimmer in this teal base. At least I'm pretty sure it's teal. It is so hard to tell underneath all of the shimmer because this one is packed. I don't know if I just went in with a slightly thicker coat for this polish, but I just found it to be a lot more full coverage and pigmented on the first coat alone. In certain angles though, you can still see through to my nail line, so I did still do a second coat to get it fully opaque, and I was just so blown away by this polish. It's so hard to pick favorites out of these 3 multi-chromes, but if you're a green lover, you are gonna love this one. I especially love that shift to teal. It is just so satisfying. And rounding out the collection is Green-Eyed Monster, which is a white glow-in-the-dark crelly polish with a dainty green to aqua to pink shifting shimmer. I was so surprised to see this shade in this collection. I guess a lot of people just really loved the glow-in-the-dark polishes from last year's Nightmare Before Christmas collection, which were limited edition, so they just had to give us something permanent. And this one is super stunning. Even though it's a white crelly, it was still pretty pigmented and just not as sheer as I was expecting it to be, and I found the formula to be really self-leveling too, so it was really nice even coverage. It just was a little bit sheer on the first coat obviously, but even on the second and third coat you can still make out a little bit of nail line. Because it's even, I think it's passable on 2 coats if you want that slightly squishy, milky kind of crelly look, but you might want to use a blurring base coat if you plan on using 3 coats and you don't want to see any nail line. I really love the shimmer in this one, and if you aren't familiar with Mooncat's glow-in-the-dark polishes, they are incredible. This is just 30 seconds under my phone flash and it's already so strong and, more importantly, smooth with its glow-in-the-dark pigment. And finally, onto my Skittles. Here is the first 4 shades of the collection in 2 coats each. I decided to do a cat eye with the magnetics since it would just be easier to see any visible nail line, and I feel like you just don't see any, which is a huge plus. You can also really tell how bold these colors are in direct sun, but I think they still look good in other lighting. The same goes for the Arsonist, where obviously it's going to look super sparkly in sunlight, but it's still very fiery in other lighting. And here is the other half of the collection as a Skittle. So even in direct sunlight, I feel like the Glory Glory of Innocence on my pinky is just really picking up as just a shimmer. There's not really a hollow sparkle like some of their other formulas. I guess I should have included an out of focus clip to better show it off, but either way, it's still really beautiful even if it's just a shimmer. But I think the stars of this Skittle are the multi-chromes, at least for me personally. I just love how they look. Hopefully you can see the actual differences between the Lust for Vengeance on my ring finger and Root of All Evil on my middle. I personally don't think these are close enough that they shouldn't be in the same collection, but maybe I'm biased because I just love these colors. Now getting into comparisons, we're starting with Forbidden Fruit and of course looking at it next to Cirque's Delusions of Grandeur, which just came out, and I saw so many people looking forward to this comparison. While they are very, very similar, I wouldn't call these exact dupes, but I don't think you need both. This is 2 coats of each, and you can see that Cirque's is a little bit more sheer. Usually I need 3 coats to make those full coverage, but even color-wise, Cirque's is a little bit more on the berry red side, while Mooncat's is like a berry purple and just a little bit darker. And even with the multi-chrome shimmer, it's a little bit more of a golden yellow in Cirque's, and it doesn't shift to the same shade of like aqua in very extreme lighting. So again, not exact dupes, but definitely very similar. Next, for Curiosity's Trap, I wanted to show this next to ILNP's Darkest Hour from their recent Coven collection. They both are magnetics with this blue kind of shimmery base, but the main difference is that Mooncat's is gold and ILNP's is silver, so they are not dupes. I actually have a gold magnetic topper. This is Cirque Alchemy, and I thought I could be a little creative and layer this over a sparkly blue base, so I tried layering it over Mooncat's Midnight Rider, which I thought would be a close enough match to Curiosity's Trap, but it's a little too dark. But even if it was an exact match, Alchemy is still a little too warm, or just more of a true gold compared to the yellow magnetic shimmer in Curiosity's Trap. Then for Pandora's box, I of course have to show this next to Cirque's Fool's Paradise, also from that recent Delusions collection. I thought these were going to be a lot more similar, but these are pretty different in my opinion. Cirque's leans a little bit more in the maroon color. It doesn't have any additional purple shimmer, and even the magnetic is a bit warmer too. It's more of like a pinky to orange shifting color. So again, I thought I could be creative with Cirque's Alchemy and layering that over Freshly Bitten, which I thought was a closer match to the base color of Pandora's box, since it's like that berry purple to red shifting kind of color. But unfortunately, the yellow magnetic pigment kind of cancels out the purple in Freshly Bitten, so it just looks a little too red, but I feel like it's still a similar vibe. Moving on to the Arsonist, I wanted to quickly show this next to Pandemonium from last year. It's another red shimmer, but this one is even brighter, almost like a cherry fire truck kind of red. So definitely not dupes. I would say it's a lot more closer in color to Your Heart's a Black Hole, which was from last year's Black Friday release. This is actually a magnetic, but I'm going to be showing it unmagnetized. This is 2 coats of each. I think there's a little bit more depth in the Arsonist, like the way that the shimmer stands out against the base. It's also a little bit more vibrant or saturated too. I also wanted to quickly show this next to Holo Taco's I'm Rover It, since it's another super fiery kind of polish, but this one's more of a burnt orange color. It's not a true red like the Arsonist. I think the closest red is Sacrificial Lacquer, which I recently destashed, so I only have this swatch stick. I'm sorry, it's just the cat eye effect and it's not unmagnetized, but I feel like it's a similar-ish color, maybe a little bit lighter than the Arsonist, and with a more finely milled kind of shimmer. And lastly, here it is next to Con Artist, which was one of their first Dearly Departed shades, if I remember correctly. And I think it was also one of Mooncat's very first shimmery, fiery reds. But as you can see, that one has a little bit more of a copper shimmer. And this one is also incredibly sheer. The Arsonist is basically what I wanted Con Artist to be. Then for the Glory of Innocence, I wanted to quickly show this next to After the Rain from the recent Fallen collection. Just in case you were curious, these are purples, but definitely not dupes. I actually thought the Glory of Innocence kind of reminded me of Ghost Ship, which is actually a magnetic polish, but I'm not going to be showing it magnetized. Even though that one is a deeper purple with a darker blue base, I feel like they just kind of look the same. And I did also want to show this next to Sealed with a Hiss because I thought the purple bases were going to be similar, even though that one is a glitter kind of polish with a blue shimmer. So if anything, it's more similar to Ghost Ship. You can see on the nail, these just do not compare. Then I remembered ILNP's Drive-In from the Summer Nights collection a couple of years ago, but I reviewed it a few months ago, and I thought these were going to be so much more similar than they ended up being. Like, they could look like dupes in the bottle, but on the nail, ILNP is just a lot more sheer with a larger shimmer particle, so yeah, these are not dupes. I do have one more comparison for this shade, and that is Shattered Glass, which is one of their linear holos in this light purple kind of color. I just thought that the bases would maybe be a little bit more similar, but obviously it's missing that greenish aqua kind of shimmer, so I thought to layer Alchemy Lacquer's Champ over that, which is more of a blue aqua shimmer. The shimmer head-on in the Glory of Innocence is green, so it wasn't an exact match, but either way, one coat of Champ just was not enough shimmer. Moving on to Lust for Vengeance, I wanted to quickly show this next to Fields of Lavender from the Fallen collection. I thought maybe the base colors would be kind of the same, but they are not. Since Lust for Vengeance has a little bit more of that brownish undertone, I thought I could also show this next to Lovebomb, but that one's a little too muted and also just too brown. The shimmer in this really reminded me of Robotica, which was one of their limited edition shimmer linear holo kind of formulas, but that one obviously is a much lighter kind of baby pink color. And here it is next to Winds of Fate, which is more of a multi-chrome at least, but again, you can easily see that this just does not compare. It's way too light and more orchid. I think the closest shades in my collection to being dupes are KBShimmer's Skiing is Believing, which is this darker pink kind of multi-chrome, but the shimmer's a little different head-on. And I did also want to show this next to Bee's Lacquer Goddess of Rot, which again has a more golden amber kind of shimmer head on, but the base color I thought would at least be more similar, but it's not. It's a little too reddish maybe, while KBShimmer is more pink, and again Lust has a little bit of a brownish sort of undertone, so I just find that it's a little too dark or more brown compared to Bee's Knees, not to mention the whole different color shimmers in the multi-chrome pigment. Then for Root of All Evil, I wanted to quickly show this next to Dark Night of the Soul, which was the shimmery multi-chrome from the last collection, but that one's a lot more blue, so definitely not a dupe. I thought the closest that I had in my collection was KBShimmer's Hidden Potential, which is basically a purple version of Skiing is Believing. So the base colors I think are a closer match, but obviously the multi-chrome pigment is a totally different color shift, where I would say there's more of a color range in Hidden Potential, while Root of All Evil is a little bit more limited, going from like green to blue. Next for Serpents of Eden, I of course have to show this next to Jewel Beetle, which was the multi-chrome from the Fallen collection. That one does shift to green in extreme angles, but head on it is pink, so definitely not a dupe. I think the closer Mooncat is Alien Invasion, which sadly is not around anymore. That one is another green kind of multi-chrome, but it has more of a yellow shimmer head on, and I forgot how sheer this was. This is 2 coats of each, and you can just see so much more nail line with Alien Invasion. It still is really pretty, but I could see Serpents of Eden being like a 2.0 version. More than anything though, I was immediately reminded of Holo Taco's Peridon't Bother Me from the Birthstone collection. These are pretty similar, but not exact dupes. And then I was also reminded of another Bee's Knees in my collection. This was Beneath the Erdtree from Polish Pickup a few years ago. I think I would say that one's actually a bit more similar. Peridon't Bother Me is a little bit more of a yellowy green, or at least it has more of a yellow shimmer head on. The shimmer looks a bit more similar in Bee's Knees, but the base color is more of a true teal. It's a little bit darker as well. So while it's not an exact dupe, I do think Serpents of Eden is a pretty good alternative alternative if you missed out on the Bee's Knees. It's just a little bit more green while Bee's Knees is more teal. I think it's also a good alternative for Peridon't Bother Me, especially if you didn't like the yellow leaning green aspect. And lastly, for Green-Eyed Monster, I was immediately reminded of Pixiestick because it's just one of my favorite polishes. In the bottle, these definitely look like they could be dupes, but they are surprisingly different on the nail. And as far as being a glow-in-the-dark, I of course have to show this next to What a Brilliant Nose from the Nightmare Before Christmas collab. That one has a pretty similar white crelly base, but the shimmer is different where it's more pink head-on. So yeah, on the nail, you can see just how sheer Pixiestick is. It is definitely not a dupe. I feel like the shimmer also stands out a lot more in that one, but as far as the glow-in-the-dark shades go, I was expecting these to be exactly the same, but I feel like there's a slight color difference here where What a Brilliant Nose looks a little bit more green. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Mooncat's new Pandora's Unboxed collection. As always, I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on this release because I thought it was fantastic. I love this lineup of these like dark, sultry, vampy kind of colors, but with these really bright contrasting shimmers or multi-chrome kind of pigments in them. They are just so beautiful. I do think my favorites are the multi-chromes from this lineup because the shifts are just so gorgeous, but I just especially love how like deep and rich the colors are because personally for me, I'm not the biggest fan of multi-chromes, and a lot of the ones that I have in my collection are definitely darker where they're usually like black based, but I feel like these are dark but in a colorful way, if that makes sense, but still very fitting for the season, which I love. The shimmers were great too. Obviously, I am gonna be a fan of those. Even with the glow-in-the-dark shade, I mean, I'm still a little unsure as to why we're getting one, but I guess maybe for people who missed out on the Nightmare Before Christmas shades, this is a really great time to pick up a white-based glow-in-the-dark polish. And the magnetics are definitely really stunning too, like, don't get me wrong. It's more of like a color preference thing for me, where out of the three, I only really loved Pandora's box, but they definitely all do magnetize so beautifully, especially if you are using a horseshoe magnet doing the velvet technique, because they just looked unreal. So I'd love to know if you are going to be picking up any of these shades. Let me know what your favorites are, or just let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!